One night, you're at the dinner table with that person everyone knows. The one who dominates conversations, who always has the best story, who makes jokes at your expense while everyone laughs, while you feel the heat rising up your neck. For months, you tried to be kind, tried to understand, tried to awaken some empathy. Nothing worked. Inhales deeply. And then, in that specific instant when they are in the middle of a speech about themselves, something shifts in you. You just stop. Your eyes lose their spark. There's no anger there, no performative sadness, there is nothing. Just emptiness. Just absence. And they feel it. They feel it so much that they interrupt their own story. They try to capture your attention again, make a more aggressive joke, raise their voice. But you remain in a place they just can't reach. In that precise moment, you discover something that neuroscience confirms. Narcissists run on a very specific fuel. It's not love. It's not genuine respect. It's reactivity. It's the guarantee that you're going to respond in some way, positive or negative, but that you will be there, fighting, suffering, making them the center of your universe. And when that fuel disappears, when you become a blank mirror, something fundamental collapses in their psychological system. You are about to understand exactly how this works. You are about to learn the art and science of the dead stare, and why it is perhaps the most powerful tool against someone who builds their entire identity on your reaction. Before we go on, stop for a second. If you're here because you're tired of trying everything, if you've ever felt invisible while being the center of someone's attention, if you've ever woken up in the middle of the night wondering what you did wrong when in reality you were being manipulated the whole time, then subscribe to the Nan channel right now. This is a space where we understand that you are not broken, that your kindness is not a weakness, that your search for genuine connection is exactly the opposite of a flaw. Subscribe and follow along as we unravel the deepest mechanisms of human behavior. Let's dive in. The first thing you need to understand is that you're not the one in the wrong. When you feel guilty for not being able to reach a narcissist with reason, with logic, with love, there's a terrible tendency in our culture to interpret that as a weakness on your part. You should try harder. You should be more patient. You should be more understanding. Of course, it doesn't work, and when it doesn't work, you blame yourself even more. This cycle is insidious, and that's exactly why it exists. But here's what neurobiology reveals. The narcissistic behavioral pattern isn't a conscious choice they make. It's a stuck neurological feedback loop. To truly understand this, you need to meet the real villain of this story. The atrophied ventromedial prefrontal cortex combined with a hyperactive mirror neural system, specifically the distorted anterior insula, mediated by a completely corrupted reward system. Now that sounds complex because it is, but let me translate. Imagine your brain as a symphony orchestra. Each region has its instrument, its melodic line, its role in the final composition. In a typical brain, there is a conductor in charge. That conductor is your prefrontal cortex, especially that region we call ventromedial, which is responsible for cognitive empathy, for the ability to see the world through someone else's eyes and feel a genuine connection to their reality. It's this region that lets you realize your behavior affects other people. It's what creates guilt when you hurt someone, what generates the genuine impulse to make amends. Calm. Now, in a narcissistic pattern, this conductor is asleep, or worse, completely absent. And when the conductor sleeps, the rest of the orchestra panics and starts playing desperately, each instrument trying to be the loudest, the most flashy. In the narcissist's case, the instrument that plays the loudest is the one that registers the attention of others, that notices if you're looking at them, if you're reacting, if you're emotionally involved. It's as if the only information their brain can process is about themselves. You become the only frequency they can hear. Hails deeply. But there's more. Inside this dulled empathy system, there's an abnormally active neural mirror mechanism. Mirror neurons are the ones that allow you to imitate, understand, and empathize with others. It's why you yawn when you see someone else yawn, why you feel pain when you see someone get hurt. In a narcissistic pattern, these neurons are in overdrive, but in a twisted way. They reflect your emotion back to themselves in a way that intensifies their own reactivity. They feel your pain and turn it into fuel for their validation. They feel your fear and turn it into proof of their power. Calm. That's not empathy. It's a broken mirror that distorts everything it reflects. And the more you react, the more this mirror lights up. The more you show that they matter to you, whether through love or hate, acceptance or rejection, the brighter their reward system glows. Their brain releases dopamine every time you react, every time you try to prove your innocence, every time you defend yourself, every time you get hurt by them. It's a contaminated reward cycle, where validation comes from your emotional reactivity. Calm. Now comes the part that can save your sanity. The dead stare works because it does the opposite of everything that feeds this system. When you look at a narcissist with genuine absence, with an emptiness that isn't anger, isn't sadness, isn't performative rejection, but simply the reality that this person has stopped occupying any relevant space in your internal consciousness, you effectively shut down their reward system. You make them invisible to their own hyperactive brain. The dopamine stops. The broken mirror has nothing to reflect. And that, for someone whose neurological architecture depends on this constant reactivity, is synonymous with death. Not literal death, but psychological death. The death of their sense of existence. Calm. And that's why it takes a long time for them to start escalating, because they can't accept this silence. But how do you actually do this? How do you go from a person who feels entirely too much regarding this person to someone who feels absolutely nothing? Here is the method, and it's more practical than you might imagine, but it requires you to understand a fundamental psychological detail. You cannot reach absolute emptiness through conscious will. Your prefrontal cortex cannot beat your amygdala by brute force. Every attempt to fake indifference will be detected. Because human beings, especially narcissists whose sensory systems are hyperactivated to detect rejection, can feel the difference between genuine detachment and performative detachment. There's a different quality in your pupil, a microscopic tension in your jaw, a slightly higher frequency in your voice that screams you are still fighting. And when they detect that you're still fighting, the game continues. The true path is through systematic desensitization combined with episodic recontextualization. Sounds complex? Let me explain. Your nervous system is like an instrument that has been tuned to be hypersensitive to this specific person. There are neurobiological cues that have been associated with them. Their voice, the way they walk, their laugh, even their smell. Each of these cues triggers a cascade of emotional responses in you because it has been paired with threat, rejection, confusion, or manipulation time and time again. Your brain is literally conditioned to react. So the first step isn't trying to change your reaction, it's reducing the sensitivity. And you do this through systematic exposure to the cue without the expected response. Every time you see them and don't react. Every time you hear their tone of voice and remain in emotional balance. Every time they try to provoke you and you simply look at them as if you were watching a documentary about some uninteresting insect, your brain starts to learn. This person is not a threat. This behavior is not relevant to my survival. This voice does not deserve my energy. Hails deeply. When you start this process, something very specific is going to happen. They will escalate. It's like turning up the volume to make sure you can still hear them. They might get more aggressive, more seductive, more submissive, more whatever they think works. This is when most people fail. You feel a spike of compassion when they get sad trying to win you back. You feel anger when they get aggressive and you want to defend yourself. You feel confusion when they suddenly become interested in you and you want to believe they've changed. All these emotions are signs that your brain is reverting to the old pattern. And here is the secret. You don't fight these emotions. You acknowledge them, thank your nervous system for trying to protect you, and let them pass like clouds in the sky. You allow the feeling to exist without allowing it to drive your behavior. You remain empty. You remain dead, because that reactivity they are looking for isn't an indicator that you still love them, it's an indicator that your system still believes they matter. And there's an additional part that most don't mention. Recontextualization. While you are in desensitization, you need to actively and deliberately change the meaning of this person in your mind. They are no longer an agent of your validation or rejection. They are no longer someone whose behavior says something about you. They are simply a living example of a psychological pattern that you are studying. When you see them manipulating someone else, you don't feel anger or compassion. You feel scientific curiosity. When you hear them tell a story that you know is a lie, you don't feel hurt or offended. You feel an almost intellectual kind of admiration for the creativity of their autofiction. When they try to hurt you and succeed, you observe your own reaction pattern with the same detachment as you would observe a chemical reaction in a test tube. This might sound cold, and it is, but this coldness is precisely what builds the vacuum that they cannot penetrate. Now, let me be honest about something you're going to face. In the first few days, even the first few weeks, you're going to feel like you're being fake. You'll feel like you're being cruel, especially if this person starts to break, to show real or faked vulnerability. Your compassion system will scream that you're a monster, that you should help, that maybe you misjudged them. But here is the truth that science respects. What you are doing is not cruel. It's an act of self-protection that is also an act of cosmic justice. You are not creating their suffering. You are simply refusing to participate as fuel. If they suffer when you stop feeding their system, that suffering is information your own body is giving you about how much they depend on exploitation to exist. You are not responsible for educating them, healing them, or saving them. Your only responsibility is to your own neurobiology, to your own freedom. There is also a technical detail you need to know. While you are in this process, you can be physically present or not. The dead stare works most profoundly when there is face-to-face contact, but it also works from a distance through one-word messages, generic replies, a complete lack of enthusiasm in your tone. If you are in a situation where you can't simply disappear from this person because they're a coworker, a family member, someone whose disappearance would create bigger problems, you can still apply the method. You respect the functional boundaries of the relationship, you communicate when absolutely necessary, you remove all emotion from your interactions. You become a social robot. And yes, they will detect this at first. But as your neurological cues stop rewarding their predatory pattern, they will eventually reduce the time and energy they spend on you. Because predators look for prey that reacts. A prey that doesn't react is a prey that isn't worth the investment. And now let me get into the part that is talked about the least. What happens to you while you're in this process? Because yes, the dead stare completely inverts them. But there is a cost, and you need to be aware of it. When you intentionally cultivate the ability to emotionally disconnect yourself this way, when you train your brain to create vacuums where there used to be connection, you are altering your own neurological structure. You are strengthening your detachment circuits. And if you aren't careful, if you don't have a clear outlet for that vacuum after this person leaves your life, you can create a pattern where you become someone who can disconnect from everything, from everyone. And then you become a lesser version of what you were trying to escape. The solution to this is to have a reintegration plan, a set of people, practices, and spaces toward which you can redirect this capacity for connection. You are training selective reactivity, the ability to be completely present and alive with those who deserve it, and completely absent with those who exploit. That is emotional sophistication, not coldness. Hails deeply. Let me be blunt about the final result. If you keep trying to connect, trying to understand, trying to love someone whose neurological system cannot receive that kind of investment, you will spend years of your life in a relationship where you are constantly offering and they are constantly taking, where you are constantly bleeding and they are constantly feeding on that blood. You will age. Your body will accumulate cortisol, that stress hormone that ages your skin, that accelerates hair loss, that freezes your arteries. Your immune system will degrade. Your ability to trust others will diminish. Your personal dreams will slowly die because all your energy will be directed toward trying to make something work that is biologically incompatible with healthy functioning. And 10 years from now, you'll be looking at a life that isn't yours, living in the body of someone who lost their first 30 years of genuine opportunity. All versus you apply this method now. Yes, there's discomfort. Yes, there's misunderstanding from people around you who don't get why you're being so cold to someone who isn't really that bad. But in a year, you will have created space in your life for people who truly love you, for work that truly matters, for visions of yourself that haven't been contaminated by their projection. Your body will start to recover. Your immune system will gain strength. You'll actually sleep. And more importantly, you'll be a person who can distinguish between real connection and performative predation. You will be free in a way that people who have never been victims of psychological manipulation can never be, because you will have learned the truth on a cellular level that your reactivity is a currency, that your attention is scarce, that your energy is valuable, and that it shouldn't be wasted on those who cannot recognize your worth. So here is the final challenge. You are at a crossroads. On one side, there's the familiar path of trying, of getting hurt, of blaming yourself, of hoping that this time will be different. On the other side, there's the uncomfortable path of creating an absolute vacuum, of accepting that some people are incompatible with your humanity, of protecting yourself with the same ferocity that you normally reserve for protecting others. There is no easy option, but there is one that leads to freedom and one that leads to a slow emotional death. You already know which is which. And if you still have doubts, if you are still oscillating between staying and going, between trying one more time and abandoning ship completely, then you already have your answer. The hesitation is the answer. The doubt is the answer. The need for more information on how to fix something you know is broken is the answer. You know what you need to do. You're just waiting for permission, for validation, for someone to confirm that you're not a monster for prioritizing your own sanity. So here it is. You are not a monster. You are someone whose capacity to love was pointed at the wrong person. That is not your fault. And correcting it is not betrayal. It is not coldness. It is the most courageous act of self-respect you can take right now. Subscribe to the MR Non-channel. Because here, we aren't going to convince you to stay. We are going to give you the tools to leave, to understand what happened, to recover the parts of you that were left with someone who never deserved to have them. Stick with me as we unravel the deepest patterns of human behavior, the ones nobody wants to say out loud. But we say them because you deserve to know the truth. Now, dig deep, study, and start today. Not tomorrow. Not when the situation gets worse. Today.